What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in today. I am just by myself doing this preview solo, but I'm hyped nonetheless. We're going to be talking about the 49ers Week 2 matchup against the New York Jets. They come in after their Week 1 loss at home against the Cardinals, and they pretty much looked ugly on all phases of the game. Maybe a few bright spots here and there, but for the most part, it was an ugly outing for a team that we heard for, 7 months or so that they had revenge on their minds. They definitely didn't show that. So they look to kind of change the course and get their season back on track Sunday in New York, or I guess New Jersey, where the Jets play. But there's some injuries that are going to be hindering their abilities, most notably George Kittle. He was recently announced that he is going to be out on Sunday. He suffered that, I believe, knee injury against the Cardinals last week on that low hit from Budda Baker. So he was being held out Sunday. It seems like more of a precaution. I think the 49ers are feeling like they could probably win without George Kittle on Sunday. So why risk further injuring his knee into a more serious injury when it's just not necessary? I would like to see what Jordan Reed can do, because we saw a lot from him in camp, and he flashed a little bit there last week on Week 1, but for the most part, Jordan Reed was non-existent. So I'm excited to see what he can do this Sunday against the Jets. They were atrocious in their first game against the Buffalo Bills. Some keys to victory here, some key matchups, and then I'll end it with our final predictions. First of all, I think that the injuries are going to be hopefully not a factor for the 49ers in the long term of the season. Adding to George Kittle is Dee Ford. Dee Ford is also out with neck spasms, and going into the week, it was kind of like he was questionable, and then on Saturday, as I record this, it came out that he's going to be out on Sunday. It could be similar to Kittle, that they're just doing it as a precaution. However, Dee Ford has had his extensive injury history, and the 49ers knew what they were getting when they traded for him. So I just feel like Dee Ford, hopefully it's nothing, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because if it, proceeds into the season and it gets worse, but nonetheless, the 49ers should still be able to be fine on their defensive line. Nick Bosa played like a man possessed against the Cardinals last week. He just didn't have any help. That's really what it came down to. He didn't have any help. We did a video on Armstead and Dee Ford not really helping him out. So if Bosa gets some help this week, the 49ers defensive line is going to feast. And I'll talk about that a little later when we get into the 49ers defense. But for now, I think they're going to be all right. Also, big news in this Week 2 matchup is that the 49ers are getting some help, some reinforcements. Rookie Brandon Ayuk is expected to make his NFL debut Sunday against the Jets. And also center Ben Garland is returning from injury. That's going to be big for this 49ers team. Although I believe Grasu is how you pronounce the center that played last week. He didn't play badly, but it was still not great play from the center. So I'm looking forward to seeing those two guys get into the lineup and produce immediately. I mean, Ayuk specifically, I think, is going to be able to come in and have an immediate impact on this team. Garoppolo called Ayuk his security blanket back in camp, which you haven't really heard him call anybody else, especially a receiver. So I think that's big. I think he had built some chemistry with Brandon Ayuk already. And the fact that he wasn't there last week, I think frustrated Garoppolo when he was seeing that his receivers weren't open, at least when he was going through his reads, because we did see later on after the All-22 came out and guys like Steve Young analyzed the footage, and they were saying, look, these guys were open. Jimmy Garoppolo is just going through his reads too quickly. So I think Jimmy needs to slow down, let the game come to him. And not only that, he needs to trust his receivers. So I'm really looking forward to Jimmy Garoppolo getting Brandon Ayuk back and Ben Garland, but specifically Ayuk, because I think this passing game, that's going to be big. The 49ers need to step it up. They cannot have another passing game performance like they did in Week 1 against the Cardinals. It's unacceptable, and it's not anything like Super Bowl caliber that this team is aspiring to be. Two of the lowest graded areas in the 49ers Week 1 entire matchup was their passing game. Jimmy Garoppolo specifically had a PFF grade of 49.8, which is horrible. It's atrocious, and they cannot win with him having performances like that. But also the receivers had a PFF grade of 57 as a whole, and that's not much better either. So this entire unit needs to step it up, And I think adding Brandon Ayuk to the mix is going to definitely help that. And also, we haven't even talked about Mohamed Sanu, who the 49ers signed this week. It's still unclear if he will play Sunday or not. Kyle Shanahan said that due to the COVID testing and regulations, the soonest he would be able to practice would be Friday. And Friday is essentially a walkthrough. So it's going to be up in the air if he plays Sunday or not. But I just look back to last season when the 49ers acquired Emmanuel Sanders. I believe it was like Tuesday or Wednesday. There wasn't too many days of practice before that Carolina Panthers game that Sunday. And Emmanuel Sanders came in and played, and he had an immediate impact. I believe he caught a touchdown that week. So if Sanu plays, he's going to have an impact, and I think he's going to be able to produce. Coach Shanahan said himself, there's not much of a difference between what we were running in Atlanta and what we're running here. Obviously, the verbiage changes, and it's never exactly the same. But for the most part, he should be able to catch on pretty quickly. And he's been able to be there, via phone calls and video calls. So he's catching up in the receiver room. It's not just that he's missing out entirely. But those are two big names to look for. One for sure will be there Sunday, and that's Brandon Ayuk. The other one is still up in the air, and that's Mohamed Sanu. If they both play, look for a dramatic impact and a dramatic difference in this 49ers passing game this Sunday against the Jets than it was against the Cardinals last week. Now, sticking with Jimmy Garoppolo, he must have heard the criticism all week. People were saying, man, Jimmy's washed. Jimmy can't do this. We thought that Jimmy, was better than this. It's looking like the same old bad Jimmy. But I don't think that's the case. I think he was rusty. We talked about it on Niners News this last week. My co-host Matt Llewellyn said, if you go by game, the quarterbacks that struggled are the more traditional pocket passer quarterbacks. And those that found success were the more athletic, mobile quarterbacks who are able to extend plays, roll out the pocket, scramble for first downs on 3rd and 17, like we saw Kyler Murray do last week. I think not having preseason and a shortened camp period definitely affected these more traditional pocket passing quarterbacks, more so than the athletic quarterbacks, at least. So I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to come out on fire, and I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. And just like we said in the shows this week, there couldn't be a better prescription for the 49ers week one's offensive woes than the New York Jets in week two, because their passing defense was horrible. Their running defense was actually pretty good. It was their highest ranked aspect of their entire team, according to Pro Football Focus, and they finished the day with a grade of 70.7. So they're not stout with their running defense, but they're definitely not as bad as their passing D. But don't expect the 49ers to have a performance like they did against the Packers in the championship game. I'm not saying they're going to be held to 20 yards, but I just feel like they're better off attacking the Jets through the air rather than on the ground, and building a big lead. And maybe later on in the game, they can start to pound and chip away at that clock once they're up big. But I definitely want to see Jerick McKinnon have some great catches out of the backfield and show off that speed that he was able to showcase for us in week one, because there were some doubts with McKinnon as well. And he came in and played really well, at least for the small amounts that he did play. So I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the table on Sunday. Now, guys, I just want to take a quick second to let you know this video is brought to you by Thrive Fantasy. I don't know if you guys have checked out Thrive Fantasy yet, but go and check them out. Their handle's below on the screen right now. All you have to do is pick your props of the top players each week and compete for over $40,000 in guaranteed prizes for the NFL Week 2. Click the link in the description below and make sure you check out Thrive Fantasy. Their handle is at Thrive Fantasy. And guess what? If you guys enter code HIVE, that is HIVE, when you sign up, you receive an instant $20 deposit match on your first deposit of $20 or more. Again, if you enter code HIVE, HIVE, Thrive Fantasy is nice enough to match your first deposit of $20 or more. So make sure you guys go ahead and sign up and prop up today. Check out Thrive Fantasy. They're a great daily fantasy site and app. Make sure you download their sports app as well. I used them last week. It was very, very fun. Super easy. You guys will love it. Again, Thrive Fantasy, use code HIVE and make sure you get that instant deposit match of $20 or more. Now, switching over to the 49ers defense, the biggest news for the Jets this week is that their wide receiver one, Jamison Crowder, is going to be out. He had an injury in week one, and he was kind of iffy all week, but it was announced, I believe, on Thursday that he's going to be out. They also had recently placed Le'Veon Bell on IR, so You know what that means? Frank the Tank, the OG, the legend himself, Frank Gore is going to be starting for the Jets in their backfield. The 49ers are going to have a tough matchup going against him, probably more sentimentally than physically, but still, Frank can ball out. Don't underestimate Frank, because I think he can still get it done. I don't think he's going to pop off against the 49ers by any means, but he's still a very capable back at this stage in his career, and the 49ers will do best not to underestimate him. Now, focusing on the Jets quarterback, Sam Darnold, he played even poorer than Jimmy Garoppolo last week, and he finished with a PFF grade of 40.2. So I think it's kind of without saying that even without Dee Ford, the 49ers defensive line has a pretty good chance at having a nice feast Sunday against the Jets. Darnold is just not Kyler Murray. He's not athletic. He's not going to be scrambling and making the 49ers defenders look foolish. He's going to be standing there like a statue, and Nick Bosa and Armstead and possibly even Kinlaw are going to be able to get off and get home on Sam Darnold, especially without his number one receiver. So make sure you guys watch the 49ers defensive line just win those battles constantly. That's where the game is always won, in the trenches, and I really like the 49ers' chances this week in the trenches. We saw that clip last season where Darnold was, yelling to his teammates, "I'm seeing ghosts," his coaches, "I'm seeing ghosts." He's going to be seeing ghosts again on Sunday, and I think he's going to be forced into making at least a couple of bad throws that are probably going to be picked off. So that leads me to my next point, which is it's next man up at corner. Now that Sherman was placed on injured reserve this week, that means Mosley, man, you got to step it up. Last week, he had a hell of a matchup against DeAndre Hopkins. It's hard to fault anybody going against DeAndre Hopkins, but you would have liked to have seen a little more from Mosley. But this week, I think he's going to be able to showcase his abilities and his talents a lot more going against a depleted Jets wide receivers core. And also, Ahkello Witherspoon is going to be in this game. He's going to be playing. He was in concussion protocol this week, but he passed. He's all ready to go. He's likely going to be starting opposite of Mosley. So one of these guys, I'm leaning Ahkello, but it could be Mosley. One of these guys are going to get a pick from Darnold, and that's largely going to be from generated pressure up front. So look out for that. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Let's move into our keys to victory. Number one, the 49ers need to convert on third down. Last week, they were 2 for 11, which is horrible. Horrible. They lost the game on a fourth down conversion, which I know you don't count. They're not counted as third downs, but even on fourth down, they were still 0-2. So in total, they were 2 for 13 on third and fourth down. You're not going to win ball games when you have those type of stats. The game is won and lost on third downs. If you can extend drives on offense, you're killing the other defense. And on the flip side, if your defense can't get the opposing offense off the field on third down, they're killing themselves. And especially in that horrible California Fire air quality that we saw last Sunday, the 49ers defense was gassed. So third downs, they need to convert on both sides of the football. Their offense needs to extend drives, and their defense needs to stop drives. So the Cardinals last week were 7 for 14, 50% on third downs. The 49ers need to do better than that. I want to see that number around 25% this week in order for them to be successful. My second key to victory for the 49ers is their receivers need to come through. We saw last week they didn't do much. Their leading receiver was Raheem Mostert, and that was largely due to that long touchdown reception that he caught and ran it in to the end zone. So I want to see more from these receivers, because they're not going to be able to have success anywhere if receivers are playing that poorly. And that leads me to my third and final key to victory. Jimmy Garoppolo needs to trust his receivers. It's as simple as that. He can't expect his receivers to come through for him if he's not going to throw the ball and give them a chance. So, I mean, last week we saw right after the game, everybody was saying, "Oh man, these receivers aren't getting separation." Dante specifically, he should have laid out for that pass. And then the all-22 came out, and everybody was looking at it a little more closer. And it was like, well, the receivers actually were open. It's just Jimmy was either going through his progressions too quickly, like Steve Young pointed out, or he just missed him entirely. I mean, he had a poor ball placement. Whatever the case is, Jimmy needs to trust his receivers. He needs to be more decisive. He needs to be more accurate with his passes. And I think if he does all of these things, the 49ers will win big. So that's it for our keys to victory. Lastly, guys, I'm going to give you our final score prediction and MVP prediction. I'm going to go 41-17 49ers. I think they win big. I think they come out, like I said, with a chip on their shoulder. And I think they understand, hey, everybody's talking about us with the Super Bowl hangover. Let's go out there and, let's beat up on the Jets. We know we can do it. Let's get the job done, and let's put some respect back on our name and get our season back on track, get back to 500. As we all saw, they were the only team in the NFC West to lose last week. So right now they're in sole possession of last place. It's only week 1. It's no time to panic. But if they lose in week 2 against the Jets, that panic button is going to be getting slammed. So they need to come through on Sunday. And that leads me to my MVP prediction, and that's Jerick McKinnon. I spoke about him earlier in the preview. He looked good on Sunday in his first game in something like 900 days, some ridiculous stat like that. I predict he's going to have not too strong of a game on the ground, just because the Jets' running defense looked pretty good last week. I would say probably about 40 rushing yards, but I do predict that he carries one into the end zone, and I think he's also going to have about 80 receiving yards, and he also carries one of those receptions into the end zone. So total 120 scrimmage yards with 2 touchdowns. I predict a big day from the Jet. It's only fitting that against the Jets, the Jet goes off. So, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think the 49ers win this one big? Do you think Jerick McKinnon has a big game? And what do you think some of the major keys to victory are? Thank you for tuning in to another game preview. This week it is 49ers versus Jets. And also, guys, right when the game ends, come over to our YouTube channel, come over to our account on Twitter. We will be going live with all of our post-game analysis, our thoughts. We'll be taking questions from viewers. So make sure you guys come and check us out immediately after the game ends on Sunday. We'll be live on YouTube and on Twitter. So come and check us out. Make sure you join, send some questions, whatever you guys want to do. Come support the channel and tune in. Thanks for tuning in, guys.